to the Africans who lived with their grandmothers, or maybe their parents, the older generation, like the people of the 60s and 70s, the people who were born during that time. Now those are our parents, right? Remember, they used to go and they used to tell us, wake up in the morning, you need to wake up and go to the shamba. Shamba is the garden where we would go and dig, plant maize, plant beans. We would then wait 5 or 6 months. We would expect harvest. Again, we would go and harvest those maize. And during harvesting, we would choose the best maize, the ones which we see are really good. We would keep them separate. And then we would dry them on the sun. You know, Africans have this traditional granary. Some maize were kept on the granary. Some maize were kept different from the granary. The maize which were kept different from the granary are those which were used as seeds. Even my grandmother, if she did not have good maize, she would go to a fellow village and ask them to give her seeds, which are very good maize. The maize which did best, or the beans, whichever the cereal. They will take the best and keep them, preserve them for the next plantation season. In Africa, we plant twice in a year. Now, something is happening that is going to change this whole system. The whole system of plantation, planting twice, going to ask your neighbor for beans or maize for plantation. All this is going to be changed, and it's going to be changed by someone who calls himself a billionaire. All this is going to be changed by Bill Gates. Bill Gates is introducing another kind of GMO. This GMO, like I told you before, we used to go to the shamba, get seeds from the shamba itself and plant again. Now that is not going to happen. Bill Gates is introducing a GMO whereby you only plant but you cannot extract seeds from your harvest. You always need to go back to the agriculture place to get those seeds and plant them again. Come to think of it, this is a strategy. This is a strategy of the New World Order. It's a strategy to make sure that people depend on a source that will determine in the long run how we buy and how we eat. It's serious. The moment we allow them get into our food, we would have messed up. There's a country called in Europe, they decided to kill all their cows because they said these cows are bringing a lot of carbon dioxide, which is bringing the greenhouse effect. Cows, God made cows, but now humans, we are seeing that cows are bringing a lot of methane, and this methane is not good for the earth. Now all cows have to be dealt with. Imagine cows. That will mean no milk, and if there is milk, it will be a GMO milk. Imagine where the world is coming to. Now let's watch what this gentleman has to say about this situation, and then I shall give you my thoughts by the end of the video.
Well, not only is Monsanto working to get seeds that only they sell, and therefore everybody has to come to them, which is called a monopoly, which means guess what they're going to do? When they've got the only seeds that'll grow, you raise the price. Everybody gets rich. Love of money, root of all evil. Part of the plan is chemtrails. Go to chemtrails911.com. Chemtrails stands for chemical trails. The goal is to spray the earth with aluminum oxide, I believe, is the primary thing. This makes the soil such that basically the genetically modified foods are the best ones to grow in it. Spending bazillions of dollars spraying the atmosphere with things that are going to, of course, here's the cover story is, we're trying to reflect back some of the sunlight so that we don't have global warming. The reality is this stuff they're spraying out is going to electrify the soil. There's a good article in New American, which is the John Birch Society's magazine. I'm not a member of the John Birch Society, nor am I against them. I'm very much for them, but I'm not a member of anything except, you know, the Lord's kingdom in my family. But they have engineered extinction. The goal is to destroy America's resources and the world's resources. The United Nations has a philosophy, very simple. Food is power. We use it to control behavior. We do not apologize. They want to reduce the population by whatever means possible. Let's take about a 5-minute break and come back and talk about more of the plans for the New World Order and what you can do about it after a few minutes. All right, let's go back to the population control. United Nations folks said food is power. We use it to control behavior. We do not apologize. Boy, they can sure do that too, you know. What if a famine hits a country? They want everybody to move into the city where they can control them a little better. Well, let's just have food distribution because of the famine. But of course, we're going to do it where we want you to come. You come to us to get the food. Len Horowitz has a great video out. I believe it's in book form also, called Emerging Viruses. If you're in the military or you're considering having your children vaccinated or getting vaccinated yourself for anything, flu vaccine included, you better read about what's really happening with vaccines. I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to give any medical advice, but I'm going to tell you, I would really think twice about that. Tetrahedron.org is a good website that deals with this topic, as does BillSardi.com. Actually, I think Bill Sardi's website is actually Knowledge of Health. But if you go to BillSardi.com, it'll come up, it'll trip over to his website automatically. There's another one called VacLib.org, Vaccination Liberation. Let's stop vaccinating. That book, these two books here, Vaccines, The Deadly Deception, and The Power of Healing, The Power of God, are available in the bookstore right next door. There were 22,000 reports of hospitalizations and injuries, including 300 deaths, following hepatitis B vaccines. I lost the date in my notes. I think it was since '96, but I may be incorrect on that. Mary Tocco, T-O-C-C-O, lives in Michigan and travels and speaks on the dangers of vaccinations. A lot of people are getting, like, autism. We had a girl here at the park yesterday who was 11 years old and autistic. That's horrible. What that does to kids, just like you're raising a baby for the rest of their life in many cases. Here's Mary Tocco's phone number if you want to call her, or marytocco.com. Dr. Kalakarinos said, I found the whole vaccine business was indeed a gigantic hoax. Most doctors are convinced that they are useful, but if you look at the proper statistics and study the instances of these diseases, you will realize this is not so. You cannot immunize sick children, malnourished children, and expect to get away with it. You'll kill far more children than would have died from natural infection. By the way, Jenner is famous for developing the vaccine, right? Maybe you see the picture of him giving the vaccine to the little boy. The little boy died a couple years later of tuberculosis. Is there something in the vaccine that might have killed him? I don't know. I suspect so. Dr. Mendelsohn said, there's a growing suspicion that immunization against relatively harmless childhood diseases may be responsible for dramatic increase in autoimmune diseases since mass inoculations were introduced. These are fearful diseases such as cancer, leukemia, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, etc. There are all kinds of diseases people are getting. Many folks, including myself, are convinced they're coming largely because of the vaccinations. You're putting poisons into your body. I taught biology. I understand germ theory and how it's supposed to work, okay? I still remain unconvinced. I'm willing to discuss it with anybody. But I defy you to find anything in Scripture that would give the indication that you should put something poisonous into your body to counteract a poison. The theory is, we'll give you a little dose of poison, you build up an immunity, you get the white blood cell count. I know all that. I still remain unconvinced, all right? I think it's a dangerous philosophy to live by. And I think you should encourage people to not get vaccinated, to at least study the truth before they make a decision like that. This lady wrote me a letter, said, Dr. Hovind, we have a son that has been damaged by the MMR vaccine, mumps, measles, rubella. He lost his ability to walk, talk, and feed himself. The government has a fund that compensates for injuries due to vaccines. Our 8-year-old Jock, would you like to have an 8-year-old that can't walk or talk or feed himself? You know how many parents are in that situation right now? Like tens of thousands of them. Now, God can use all that for His glory, and I know when you have a handicapped child, it brings out the best in the parents. And Dale Evans and Roy Rogers wrote the book, Angels Unaware, about the handicapped child that they had for a while and what good it did for their life. And wonderful things can be done. God can get glory out of anything. But to unnecessarily destroy a child's life, which is what's happening, is cruel and criminal. Okay? I don't have the documentation on this story. I'm going to tell you this story, but I'm going to tell you right now I can't document. I don't remember where I read it. I read a lot, and I study a lot, and I didn't write it down. One of those things like, oh, that's a great idea, and I missed it. But there was a group of doctors meeting just in the last few years, if I recall the details, and they were getting up testifying about the dangers of vaccinations. Don't vaccinate your kids. This is dangerous. Kids are dying. What are we doing? Why are we vaccinating kids? After these doctors talked about all the horrible things happening with vaccinations, I think 2 or 3 doctors got up in a row who were pediatricians. They said before this group of doctors that were considering, voting on writing a recommendation saying, look, we recommend you not vaccinate your kids. That's what they were considering doing. These pediatricians got up and said 80% of our business, of our income, is from vaccines. If you make this recommendation, you're going to put every pediatrician out of business. So guess what? They didn't vote to recommend against vaccines. Because, nobody eats their own. The doctor's got to take care of it. After all, Mercedes are expensive, It takes a lot of income to pay for one of them things every month. So, it goes right back to 1 Timothy. The love of money is the root of what? All evil. So if any medical doctors are watching this tape and you're recommending this, you better study what you're doing. People are trusting you for advice. And if you're recommending kids get vaccinated and then they get an autoimmune disease, and many do, and I'm sure you're going to have a cover story of why it happened. Oh, it must have got, must have got it somewhere else. It wasn't me. Then there's sure going to be a cover story. Okay, they always have that. Okay, but for the next 70 years, as that mother has to feed and change diapers on her baby, you think about it. You got your $40 or $80 or whatever it was, and they're paying for it for the rest of their life. Think about that long and hard. This goes on to the story here. This lady writes, she says, this business of shots for tots is aimed at seeing to it that children under 2 are fully vaccinated by their doctor's offices. You would not believe what's going on in this area. After studying this for the last 4 years, Satan is seeing to it that well-meaning parents are destroying their baby's immune system by putting over 22 viruses into their system before they are 2. 909shot.com has story after story after story of people destroyed by vaccines. Now, Satan's goal is to reduce the population of the earth. So guess who would be behind something like this? God's plan is to fill the earth. God would not be behind a situation like this. This is an article from marytoko.com's website. This is an article by, or a statement from Dr. Howard Ernovitz. And by the way, he's no slouch. He has a PhD, a degree in microbiology from University of Michigan, Department of Pathology at Washington University. He's the director of molecular and cellular engineering at Zoma Corporation, a senior scientist, Institute of Cancer Medical Research Institute of San Francisco. He developed the cat vaccine against feline leukemia. Okay? He says, he believes HIV is a hybrid monkey virus that was in the polio vaccine given to 26 million Americans between 55 and 61 in the form of a sugar cube. How many of you got the sugar cube polio vaccination? I did. You did. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a big deal. You go in, you got this little sugar cube with this drop of red fluid in there, and you eat it. All the kids in school lined up to do it. I'm convinced my oldest brother got polio from the vaccine. Now, he didn't get real crippled by it. He has one leg shorter than the other. I do too. Partially one leg about a quarter inch shorter, not much. But my parents started a club in Peoria, Illinois called the WOW Club, Walking or Wheeling. It was a club for people in wheelchairs. I grew up, from the time I can remember, going to activities, bowling, picnics, parties and stuff with the WOW Club that my parents started, because I grew up with these people in wheelchairs. Many, many, many of them from polio. It was real common I was born in 53, very common in the 50s. Then they claimed they got the cure for polio. I'm not convinced they did. They might have changed the name and got the symptoms a little different, and I'll call it, something else, multiple sclerosis or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of folks who are really suspicious about this. I don't think they fixed it. I think they, or like when they started getting diseases that were carried in sick cows, and they said, oh, we got to pasteurize the milk. So they start pasteurizing the milk, which kills almost everything good in the milk. And then some of the diseases go away. Well, at the same time, they start inspecting the herds for sick cows and not taking milk from sick cows. So how do you know which one caused the effect? Is it the pasteurization, or is it the inspecting the herds and not taking milk from sick cows? Of course, guess who took the credit? Pasteurization. cured the problem. I would be real cautious about believing that too. But this is a chart. Mary Toko has this on her website of all the states. I just picked a few here in alphabetical order. The percent of increase in autism just over a 10-year span. You know, Illinois, back in '92, had only 5 kids with autism, and then they got 3,800 kids with autism in 2001 and 2. 75,000% increase in autism. Nobody in Mississippi was autistic in '92. All of a sudden it jumps up to 461, 10 years later. I mean, any doctor with half of a brain in his head ought to be looking at these statistics and saying, you know, what is causing this? What is causing autism? I don't know why they're not putting the connection together that, hey, you know, maybe it has to do with the poisons we're putting in the kid's system. The vaccines could be causing it. Mary Toko has an article here that says, America has the highest death rate of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS it's called. I remember one of my neighbors when I was a kid growing up, they said, oh, the baby died in the crib. SIDS baby, sudden infant death. I said, what is that? Baby just died. You know, parents go in the morning, the baby's dead. In 1970, Australia made vaccines non-mandatory. 50% of the parents opted out of the program, and SIDS dropped by 50% that year. Don't you think somebody with a brain would say, you know, maybe there's a connection?
Now, after watching this video, this is the verdict I can lay. First things, humans need to understand that anything that was prophesied in the Bible shall come to pass. The war we see in the Middle East, these were things which were written in the Bible. The lots of murders you hear, these are things which were written in the Bible. The advancement in the artificial intelligence, now there's an AI that can create videos. An AI can edit and create videos. That's a human intelligence, and it's so hard. Back then, it was so hard for machines to do such things. There's a test in computer science called the Turing test. The Turing test was a test which was developed to see how much artificial intelligence is. You understand, the Bible says, during the end times, the knowledge of man shall increase. This is what we are seeing right now. The knowledge of man is increasing. But to what extent? The knowledge of man is increasing in a way that man is starting to play God. When man plays God, man pays the consequences. When man tried to create human, it failed. Man can never make nothing that God did. That is what we know. That is what I know. We can just build machineries, but we can never reach to the level of creating things. Look at what GMO is doing to the people. Look at what Bill Gates is doing to the people. Bill Gates is just paving way for his master. Bill Gates is just a puppet master working for someone bigger. And this person, we are revealed to him in the Bible. The Bible tells us that there's a time when the Antichrist shall come. The time when there will be no buying and selling without a chip. The time when you have to register your identity with the number of 666. 666 is the digits of the computer. Imagine the Bible was 2,000 years ago and we have 666. Computers use numbers to communicate. Binary digits, zeros and ones. These zeros and ones can also be translated into 666. You understand? It is prophesied, it shall come to happen. Imagine you planting your own seed. It does well or it doesn't do well. Next time you want again to plant on that very same shamba or garden. Shamba is garden in Swahili. If you want to plant again in this same shamba, you have to go back to that shop and tell them I need another dose of this food, of this maize, of these beans. This is not something Africans are used to. Africans, we are used to nature providing for us. Nature has been providing for us for the farthest time possible, for the longest time possible. Nature has always been providing to the African people. The African people should just learn to appreciate, and the African people should just learn to refuse to accept the dealings of Bill Gates. Bill Gates' agenda might pass in Kenya because we also have another puppet president. The puppet president Ruto is allowing people like Bill Gates to come to Africa, to come into Kenya to be precise, and test his things here in Kenya. It is through William Samoei Ruto that we've seen UN come here. It is through him we've seen the erecting of some weird statues in Nairobi. weird statues that are Masonic. If you know what I mean, that culture, that organization, they're showing themselves now in public. Things that were hidden are now being exposed. The Bible says, during the end times, the truth shall be exposed. The truth shall be known. What is the price of the truth? Are we ready to hold the truth? Are we ready to accept it? It shall eventually come to pass that people have to be forced to accept this 666, in which some people will accept it, some people will refuse it. You understand? The only thing we can do is postpone it, but we can never bring an end to it happening. It will always come back and happen. Right now, it's just food. When you control food, you control the masses. When you control the masses, you tune them into your will. It's just like music. Music, the evil person uses it to unconsciously access your brain. The same way, when you are hungry, you don't think, you just want a way to feed your hunger. That is what happened with Esau and Jacob. Esau was only thinking about food, and he threw away the best thing God ever gave him, which was firstbornhood. Yes, just imagine. That is what Bill Gates is bringing to Africa. They wanted, in some country in Europe, they wanted to kill all the cows. Their argument was that cows are increasing carbon dioxide, which is in turn bringing about greenhouse effect, which builds up some gas. You understand? So they think an answer to bringing about an end to greenhouse effect is by killing the cows. I've never seen such a weird logic before, but I'm seeing it happening in Europe. I'm seeing it happening in places such as those things coming from Europe are really not, all of them are not good. It's time we be skeptical and we scrutinize everything and anything we listen from that other side, because it's now food, tomorrow it will be purchases. The other day, they'll start getting to our houses. That is something Africans should resist. That is all I have to say for today. If you enjoy my work, kindly subscribe to the channel, give a super thanks, and remember to share the video with your loved ones. See you in the next video, where we shall also have deep critical analysis affecting black people